Schizophrenia and Wisdom of the Body. A presentation by Professor Gershom Zajcek, Faculty of Medicine, Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Introduction. What is schizophrenia? According to Richard Benthal, it spreads confusion among psychiatrists and ought to be deconstructed. Here is the reference, deconstructing the concept of schizophrenia. Benthal says, I challenge two assumptions that inform much of traditional research into psychosis. First, the assumption that psychotic disorders fall into discrete types, such as schizophrenia, and second, the assumption that psychotic experience and behavior have no meaning. Stated otherwise, psychotic symptoms are or form a continuum or spectrum which extends from health to disease, and they have a biomedical meaning, an important biomedical meaning. Since medicine ignores these attributes of psychosis, Benthal adds, there is no convincing evidence of a schizophrenia syndrome. Actually, schizophrenia is also a manifestation of a confusion in medicine, which lacks concepts to handle complexity and optimality. This confusion causes overdiagnosis, overtreatment, and iatrogenesis, which I described in other presentations. Medicine lacks a consistent framework for presenting its phenomena. Here I provide a simple framework with two purposes. First, to illustrate what is wrong with the theory of medicine. Two, how to handle medical phenomena in a consistent manner. Two entities operate in our body, the conscious and the non-conscious. Mind is that I am aware of in me, like my thoughts, feelings, and will. Wisdom of the body, or wob, is all in me which I am not conscious of. I describe them in several presentations. I am less concerned with their nature and mainly interested in their communication. They are two continually updating memories. Mind has a short-term memory which integrates the now experience into an image. Long-term memory stores images of the past, and both are serial memories. Wob memory is parallel. It is embedded in its processes. Mind and wob are separated by a one-way filter, which I call verge. It lets mind images into wob and inhibits any message from wob to mind. After all, wob is non-conscious. So here you have the scheme of me, mind, wob, and verge, which separates them. We have a long-term memory, short-term memory, and a parallel memory of wob. The mind communicates with wob with an image, but wob sends his messages through senses to the short-term memory. So two channels communicate sense information. Conscious senses are connected to short-term memory. They include also wob messages which enter consciousness. A non-conscious channel connects senses directly to wob. So this is a conscious channel, non-conscious channel. Thus, information from senses is transmitted through two channels. Mind receives information from its surroundings and from its body, like the position of a raising hand. All information is converted into images. Any information received by VOB modulates its processes. Each sense is converted to a distinct image. It is remembered in the mind as an image. Usually we take image to be a picture. A melody is an image of a sound sequence. A smell of a steak or its taste are two distinct images of a steak. So image is more than a picture. You may regard it as a representation of a sense, and more on it in another presentation. We think in images, not only when we daydream, but always. Reality is represented in the mind as an image. Image is the only brain currency. Whatever is exchanged between mind and VOB is an image. Mind continually sends images to VOB, which converts them to an action. So VOB does not send any direct message to mind, since it is non-conscious. A process which I call verge prevents VOB directly interfere with mind. Whatever I feel in VOB is conveyed to me indirectly by senses as an image. VOB is a set of non-conscious processes and may be regarded as a non-conscious image. Autism and schizophrenia result from a breakdown of verge. It lets VOB signals enter directly into consciousness, and VOB image actually overpowers the mind. So here you have the verge is damaged, and we have VOB is sending direct impressions and signals to mind. And I described this in the presentation on autism and wisdom of the body, but the pathophysiology is also applicable to schizophrenia. Two channels that communicate sound to me. Sound entering the mind is converted to an image here. Sound entering VOB modulates processes and it is not converted into image. And here you have an example. For instance, I feel my intestine are moving, and which is called a borborygmus, rumbling or gurgling noise that occurs from the movement of fluid and gas in the intestine. So the message, the borborygmus, is done indirectly into mind. It is not perceived directly, only indirected into mind. So here you have the sound which I hear consciously, sound which I hear unconsciously, and a borborygmus, which is sound generated in the body, which enters my consciousness. So sound entering VOB is non-conscious. It interacts with processes. A sound wave causes a process to oscillate and change its energy content. Thus, sound interacting with VOB remains a sound and is not converted to an image. I'm speaking about this channel, sound that enters directly into VOB. So in summary, VOB perceives sound as sound, and mind converts it into an image. Suppose a sound modulates intestinal peristalsis. Bob transmits it to mind through proprioceptive senses in the intestine in form of borborygmi, and mind converts it into an image. Some people have a verge leakage, which lets Bob transmit sound directly to mind. Bob sound modulates mind sound image, and it becomes a voice. So what we hear here, we have the leakage, and Bob transmits the sound as a sound. Well, you remember that the sound in the mind is an image. The two merge together and become a voice. It is an inner voice which results from the fusion of mind sound image with Bob sound. So inner voice sounds like a real one and may cause confusion. We think in images. Reality is represented in the mind as an image. Whatever is exchanged between mind and Bob is an image. As long as verge is intact, we can distinguish between thought image and voice. When we perceive thought images as real voices, it indicates that verge is permeable, like in this picture. So hallucination is a manifestation of damaged verge. Voice intensity, which we may hear, depends on the degree of verge damage. It is a spectrum of intensities, which extends from the healthy to the ill. It may be inborn or caused by a virus like a subclinical encephalitis or by a trauma. Any sense may be involved in a hallucination. One or more may shape the hallucination experience. It all depends on the degree of verge damage. I distinguish between the following hallucination stages: compensated, non-disturbing. When a woman manages to live with her voices, she may even learn how to calm them. And there's a decompensated, when voices disturb, cause suffering, and she needs outside help. I distinguish also between first and third person hallucination. So first person hallucination: Lord is my shepherd and talks to me. I know that I am not supposed to hear voices, yet otherwise I might not hear him. Third person hallucination: when the devil whispers to me obscenities, I ask the doctor to help me out. He answers, "You got schizophrenia," and prescribes the right remedy. Hallucinations indicate solely that verge is leaky. Their content is generated by images of reality in my mind. When decompensated, hallucinations require two kinds of therapy: verge repair by neuroplasticity and mind repair by psychotherapy. In order to repair verge, it would help if we knew where it is located in the brain. like in the case of brain hemorrhage, which destroys the left Broca brain region and patient is mute. We may train him to mobilize his right Broca region for this purpose, and he may talk. New insights in neuroplasticity indicate that the brain may restore any damaged function by mobilizing other brain regions for this purpose. And there you have a very important site by Norman Deutsch, The Brain That Changes Itself. What is the right verge region which might replace the damaged left verge region in this analogy? In another presentation, I describe how I may control my non-conscious VOB in the attempt to modify its functions. And there I mention communication with VOB with thought images, experiencing VOB with psychedelics, and control VOB with conditioning and meditation. All these have some value for repairing verge. This method utilizes 4 VOB instincts which operate also in verge repair: imagination, curiosity, association, and conditioning. I described it in another presentation how I control my non-conscious. Reality is represented in the mind by an unpleasant image which causes suffering. Mind repair requires a separate training by psychologists. Verge damage does not create mind content. It only modulates it. Schizophrenia is driven by 2 distinct processes: mind, an image of reality which causes suffering; VOB, verge damage. Unfortunately, psychiatrists do not see it that way and contribute to the suffering of the voice hearer. That's all.